G'day humans, welcome to the safe space for dangerous ideas. Here's a dangerous idea for you. You open an app on your phone. You identify someone who you might like to have sex with. You chat with them briefly. You give them your home address. They come over. You have sex with this random individual. They leave, and you expect that to fulfill you, to fill you up and provide you with some sense of meaning and connection in your life. That is and has been the modus operandus of many a young gay person for the past few decades. And where is it leaving them all? Is there something to be said for the social conservatives' call for fidelity and monogamy to be somewhat elevated as an aspiration, as a better way of life? These are the kinds of issues that are being wrestled with in a new play at the Sydney Opera House. It's been a smash hit at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, produced by the same people who brought you Fleabag and Baby Reindeer, two humongous British television shows that also began as one-person shows at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And so the star of the show, who is a two-time Tony-nominated actor, and the writer of the show, also an award-winning playwright and screenwriter, came by the Uncomfortable Conversations studio on the day of their opening night at the Sydney Opera House to wrestle with these ideas, with promiscuity and fulfillment and grief and self-worth and mental health and cultural malaise, sex on stage, and why Australians and Brits seem so allergic to American notions of self-help. This was a wonderful chat. I hope you enjoy as much as I did. Oh, the show, of course, is called Feeling Afraid as if Something Terrible is Going to Happen. That's Feeling Afraid as if Something terrible is going to happen. The writer is Marcelo Dos Santos and the actor, Samuel Barnett. It's fascinating and lovely and very sweet, actually. It was a sweeter play than I thought it was going to be, and a more kind of beautiful one in a way. How much of this is Marcelo, and how much of this is a fictitious character, and how much is Samuel? Maybe don't want to leave you on the.
I think there's definitely, because when I was writing it, I'd already worked with Samuel on a workshop, and we'd become friends, and I sort of knew his voice and I could hear it. So I think some of the intonations and some of the ways that the jokes I felt should or could land, that sort of Sam, like I was like, oh, he'll do that
Yes, right.
on that line, and that'll work. The kind of content is a sort of composite of, I was thinking about this the other day, that I think like the commitment issues of the main character is not me. Like I'm a bit attachy. I kind of go,
Oh, right. Yeah. Are you a serial monogamist?
So yeah, kind of, and sort of struggled a bit with the single life. So the sort of commitment stuff is sort of more a couple of my friends and things I'd sort of felt. And then actually, I suppose a little bit of me as well at points, I'm sure. And then the just more general neurosis is probably more me.
And Samuel, are you a
And
serial monogamist or a dirty little whore?
Well, I too have been a serial monogamist. I think Marcelo and I, quite similar emotional types and relational types as well. So yeah, I've definitely had, anxious attachment. Can't even say it. I'm so anxious about it. Anxious attachment. And I mean, I have to say though, I got out of one relationship and was single for a year, and that was probably one of the best years of my life. Not because I was being a dirty little whore, but because it was necessary to sort of, find myself finally at the age of 30-something and go, okay, this is who I am when I'm on my own. And that was great. And actually, I think that set me up much better for the relationships that I subsequently had. But yeah, definitely. So,
I mean, it seems like the big theme, one of the big themes, is the tension between is meaningless sex liberating, or is it shameful? Is it shame-inducing? Is it a fruitless quest to fulfill yourself that's never going to provide you with fulfillment? Or is it a form of self-expression and like casual freedom that normies don't get to experience? But so that doesn't form part of the fabric of your gayness or your relationship?
Oh, yeah, I mean, 100%. It definitely, yeah, no, that's a very good reading, I think. I wrestle with that a bit in myself. So I was in a really long relationship for 9 or 10 years when I was like early 20s and all the way.
I mean, what are you doing? That's the best time to be single.
I know, but
that's
then
when you're young and beautiful and hot. Everyone wants you.
I know.
Interesting. That wasn't my experience.
I mean, comparatively, you never get. I remember hearing.
I've got better as I got older, personally, but
I think David Sedaris says, like, when in a commencement address to university students, he was like, "I know that you don't think that you're beautiful right now because you're comparing yourself to all of your peers, but trust me, once you're my age, you'll look back on photos of yourself now and go, I can't believe I was that."
No,
pretty."
I'm absolutely the opposite. I look back at photos of myself and go, "Gosh, there are much better production values these days. I know how to look after myself better."
Right.
I was an amoeba for years, is how I felt about myself. And the shame thing is so interesting. I don't think it has to be either or. There was that brilliant Instagram guy who did a roundup of his hookups on the apps. Yeah. And what was so great about him was the kind of out and out, here's what I did. Here's the year I've had in hookups, and the amount of hookups he had and stuff. Plus he went, and here's how I feel about myself about it. And the whole kind of panoply of sort of good and bad, shame and joy and all of that. And it was all in there. And I was like, that's a good way to do it, because there is this thing of like, oh, if it's casual hookups, is that just shame inducing and awful and we don't really talk about it and we feel bad about ourselves? Or is it complete joy? And actually, it's just all of it. It's the full human experience. That's what I like about the play, is that actually I think he's grappling with the full human experience of it.
Yes.
And I think he is. And I suppose I was, after my long relationship, and then I was single for 5 years. But that was tough after such a long period. And intellectually, I was like, I need to sort of like experience things and go out. But it is quite exposing. And
did you feel like a duty to have fun?
Yeah, a little bit. But now I look back and be like, oh God, I should have had even more fun, because actually, but you don't know what's going to happen next. So actually, you don't know, is this going to be forever feeling a bit shit about myself because of sex? Or actually, am I going to meet someone at some point so I don't have to I could just enjoy this period? You don't know.
No, and the grass is always greener, isn't it? I mean, if you're having lots of sex and you're unattached, then you want the security and love of a relationship. And if you have the security and love of a relationship, then you want the freedom and boisterousnness and no strings attached.
Exactly.
Random sex.
Yes.
Have we got it all wrong in making it a binary?
Yeah, I think we have. I really think we have. Because I also think it's such a personal thing that I remember wanting to feel the joy and the freedom of kind of unattached, no string sex and being able to be out there and all that. But I was too scared to go to clubs. I was too scared to go on the gay scene. I found everything so frightening and sort of scary. And it wasn't about feeling threatened by other people. That was my own thing. And who knows where that comes from? Nature, nurture, I don't know. But so it's so individual. And what would be way more freeing is if it wasn't binary and if it was, you can just kind of express the way you want to express, I guess.
Why were you afraid of going to gay clubs?
I felt not good enough, insecure. I looked really young for my age.
But everyone's got a type. Like there are people who are into really young looking twinks.
I grew up in an incredibly sheltered little town in the north of England. Homophobia was rife. There were no role models. This was like the 80s. There was nothing positive, like nothing. In fact, all that was on TV was negative as well. So then at the age of 18, having experienced that, I went to London. And you would think I might go, oh my God, I'm completely free. But actually, I was in a year at drama school where at the time I was the only gay person in that year. And you would think, well, surely there's going to be loads of gay actors.
Drama school in London.
Yeah. So I still didn't feel like, basically what I didn't have, for want of better words, is a mentor in that way. I didn't have someone to kind of take me out and show me the ropes or kind of take me onto the gay scene.
I mean, it is strange because all drama school students are gay and all Londoners are gay.
Until they're not, or until they are again. Absolutely. Right. I mean, my friend Malcolm Sinclair has this thing where you say, is he gay? And he says, he helps out when we're busy. Yeah. That's, so, a lot of people are straight until they're not, But I did not have the sort of mentorship, the role models. I would never have gone into Soho on my own. But that's the way I'm built as a person. That's what I mean. I think it's so individual. Someone else coming from my background would have been like,
what does a role model mean, though? Because...
I mean, role model, friend, I don't know, someone to just kind of take you.
But you were aware of the existence of this community. Like it existed. You knew about Soho. You knew about gay clubs, right? Was it that you didn't find it welcoming or didn't feel that you had a place in it or that you weren't one of them?
It was nothing to do with Soho or the clubs or anything. It was very much a personal thing going, I don't feel brave enough to do this. I could not go on my own.
Right.
And it would have been on my own.
Right.
And someone else might have gone on their own and found their people.
Yeah.
I just didn't. So I found my people elsewhere. It's not like I didn't have support and friends. It was more that in terms of experiencing what I thought I was meant to experience as a gay lifestyle. And I think that's the key here. I was like, oh, that is what it is to be gay. Therefore, I should experience that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the binary doesn't work.
Right.
Because it's so individual.
To some extent, that's sort of what I'm pointing to when I say, like, it didn't feel like, for me, the community, quote unquote, with a capital C, seemed so rigid and preset and had such a clear way of walking and talking and thinking and speaking and voting and dancing that it was like, I haven't been issued with a proper card to be admitted to that.
I didn't have the handbook.
You don't, you didn't
know
have the
what
handbook.
I was meant
there
to
was
do.
no invitation in the mail from Her Majesty saying, like, you are hereby cordially invited to be gay.
Yeah.
I went through phases, I think, when I was in my sort of late teens and early 20s where I was a bit more relaxed about stuff. But the sort of spectre of HIV was really big,
massive.
Growing up. And I think a lot of my 5-year single period was kind of just before PrEP kind of came in. So my sense of that, I think, it was informed by that sort of shadow, I think.
Right.
And I don't know if you felt something similar, but sex wasn't entirely problem free potentially, and that was sort of.
Why wasn't a pocket full of condoms just the solution to that?
I don't know.
Because of the adverts on TV in the 80s, which basically had the gravestone that said, essentially gave you the message that if you have gay sex, you're going to get AIDS and die. I mean, that is what I grew up with.
Didn't they include the bit about unless you use a condom?
No. Well,
no, it's not in.
I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, maybe
later on that education came in, but in the 80s when we were kind of,
that was literally the slogan here. Australia had one of the most successful anti-HIV public health campaigns, and they had terrifying ads that would scare the shit out of everybody. And their tagline at the end of the ad was "Always use a condom." Always.
Maybe that was on there, but as a kid watching it, that's not the message I took. I saw a gravestone.
I think I saw a gravestone and heard about gay people, and those connections, I think, imprinted a certain level, probably.
Plus, we had Section 28 under Thatcher, which meant that it couldn't be talked about in schools. It couldn't be you couldn't be educated about it. So you were basically seeing negativity from the TV, whatever you got from your family, and from my family. I mean, there was no homophobia, but there was just nothing. It wasn't even talked about or considered. So that was the messaging I grew up with.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Marcelo?
Yes, I mean, I'd moved to England in 1990.
From
Australia, from Sydney. And I think somewhere in my brain, I don't know whether it's because of what I was, my family were very accepting, but there's sort of outsiderness, the otherness, it lingers more than. I hope younger people now have that less. I don't know.
Oh, sure they do. Yeah,
and it did make me just a bit nervous. And actually, also, what's in the play is that thing of him not quite being able to trust himself to do the right thing, and potentially self-sabotage in some ways. And I have that, and I don't know where that comes from, because generally I'm really nice and hopefully respectful and nice to other people, and hopefully, but I'm not always nice to myself, maybe. So I sort of worry somewhere in my brain that I'm going to get this wrong, and then it's I was trying to have fun, and then I got caught out. That was also the messaging. I think there was quite a lot of shame around how kind of safe sex was presented to us. That felt nerve-wracking. Actually, I think it's in Nina Dunham in Girls, in the first series of Girls. She worries about getting an STI, and they're like, well, did you use a condom? And she's talking about oh, what about the bits that go over the side? what bits? And I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of what I carried around. Yeah. It's it's impossible to be safe, and I don't know.
Right. Self-sabotage is a whole other interesting theme as well, where I don't remember who said it, but they said, if someone else spoke to you the way that you let your brain speak to you, you would punch them. And yet we walk around every day talking to ourselves in ways that we would not tolerate somebody else in terms of our own self-criticism. I mean, maybe one way out of the trap of fear for the young gay person, I'm trying to think of why I didn't have that particular concern. And maybe I took more of a an almost journalistic curiosity in what it was like to be gay. Like maybe my way to self-justify the fact that I wasn't a dirty faggot was to be like, well, this is a curious and interesting part of human sexuality. So why don't I like do an anthropological examination of what gay clubs or gay bars might be like? That way I don't have to be of them and I don't need the card to get into them or to be right in them or to be accepted in them. I'm coming in with my journalist hat on to examine this phenomenon and then have fun flirting and occasionally hooking up. It's funny the sort of tricks that your brain will play in order to justify getting what it wants.
Yeah.
While evading whatever that it might mean in some grand sense about your own identity or who you are. I mean, the thing about shame is interesting. I think one of the lines that I like the most in the play is something along the lines of after a hookup saying, "And I didn't feel shame," and then the character catches himself and says, "I tried not to feel shame." An interesting and nuanced distinction. Where does that come from?
It's just all the stuff we've been talking about. Often when I came to Australia on holidays to visit my family or whatever, I'd be able to achieve a level of kind of like flow or something when it came to like my sex life. I'd sort of just enjoy it because it's like, I'm only here for like 3 weeks and I can just sort of have fun. But actually I sort of, in the UK, perhaps because I was always on some level looking for like love and acceptance within those hookups. And then when you don't get it, then you feel like, oh, that's because I'm not good enough. So I think that's where, rather than just being like, oh, actually, this is fun and I'm just having fun and it's for me. So I think it's probably that dissonance between what we say we want, which is to have fun, and actually what we really want, which is maybe like someone to hold me.
Yeah, I think that's so true. That's absolutely it, because I realized all the hookups that I had in my 20s was absolutely looking for love. And that's kind of the problem, that I wasn't doing it just to have great sex. I was doing it unconsciously because I wanted something else. And it was always afterwards that I'd go, why didn't that feel great? And why do I feel awful about myself? And I go, because actually what I really wanted was intimacy. And that did not happen. Not the kind of intimacy I wanted.
Right.
And I always felt shame afterwards, even though it's completely...
You're such old, mature souls. I didn't have that in my 20s. I just wanted to get laid. And I didn't want someone sleeping over and having to like pretend to make breakfast for them or something.
No, I definitely wanted the spooning and breakfast.
Just leave. I empathized with like the asshole character who is the dude who's always asking the main character to leave
because he's got to be up early.
Like, let's make him Australian next time.
Let's make Michael Australian.
It's like 3 a.m. You're like hanging out at his place. You're like wanting him to, and he's like, "Can I have something on in the morning? Can you go? Like, what did you think this was?"
But I mean, you're obviously more in touch with your needs.
That's a very complimentary way of describing being an arsehole.
No, but again, I don't think that's being an arsehole. I think that is just different types of personality. It's like we get what we want, and then why are we all hanging around here?
Yeah,
can we just get rid of
the morning? Let me sleep. We've done
Whereas I wasn't. I was I was not in touch with my needs at all. It was all completely unconscious, and so I could never figure out what it was I wanted and why it was always so dissatisfying and shameful afterwards. Was because there were needs that I just wasn't meeting, and it took me a lot of therapy to understand that. Oh, I've got needs that I just don't even know about.
Right.
Building on the question of shame, because I did when I was writing, I was like, I don't necessarily want to like write about shame, you know, in a kind of depressing way or a kind of self-perpetuating way, because that is something that I think can be critiqued in kind of representation of gay life. It's like, oh, it's tragic or it's depressing. And this show isn't that, I should say. But it also would not be true to say that I always felt great or it is always perfect for everyone. Like, so I felt like actually it's like, yes, I could, it wouldn't be truthful to my experience, but I don't know if it's that truthful anyway to suggest that everything is one thing or another. I think it can be lots of fun and it cannot be lots of fun. And there is a loneliness to it sometimes. And it's okay to talk about both things.
Yes, indeed. And it's also sometimes the case that the payoff, the actual sex, is not really the object, or like even if you're sort of characterizing it as being love or intimacy being the final object, but also the whole flirtation can be the object, the chase can be the object, the lust can be the object, and then the actual final consummation could be subpar and leave you feeling empty. But maybe part of the game of the pursuit could be, there are lots of different ways of finding fulfillment or liberation in the pursuit without necessarily pegging it to the shame of pouring yourself out. too much. I mean, it is quite a bleak. It does present a picture of what it's like to be a young gay man that is unfulfilled and unfulfilling. And quite,
I think it's like we said. I think it's sort of my own experience, and I wouldn't want to speak to other people's experience too much. So I can't say it's a portrait of anything. But it's a sort of story.
I mean, it's ultimately uplifting. I don't want to give the impression that it's a dark show, but because it's a story, and so it has an ending, and it's not a tragedy. Suffice it to say. But the dynamic of questing soullessly to be filled by some man on a white horseback who's
but it's not
compulsively going back to that stream and getting nothing from it, essentially,
which is not a gay thing. So that's what I love about the show. I think Marcelo's written something so specific, and because it's so specific, it becomes universal. So the apps thing is for everyone these days, and the hookup culture is for everyone. And then also there are lots of people feeling shame about it, or there are lots of people searching for romance through it and maybe not finding what they want. And then there are lots of people having the best time, regardless of sexuality and gender. So I think what I always find quite surprising and satisfying is the response that I get from straight people around it, kind of going, oh my God, I didn't think I was going to relate to any of this because it's a gay character and it's a gay story, and actually the emotional component and all the self-sabotage and all the shame stuff, I think it's just human. I think there is absolutely an extra layer when it comes to being gay, just around the culture and what the culture used to be like, how it's changing, what it is now. But ultimately, I think it's a universal story. That's why I think it kind of, that's why I think it's kept going actually as a play. Like, this is our third iteration and our first international outing, and there's a reason it's kept going.
Yes.
Basically.
Where were the others?
So we started in Edinburgh at the Edinburgh Festival in the Roundabout, which is a part of Summer Hall Gallery, if people, which is a fun venue, and it was a little bit of an experiment. So it started with during lockdown. I felt. I got a little bit of Arts Council money, so a little bit of government money. And I was like, well, it sort of feels like the end of the world, so I'll just kind of write something, but I'll kind of write it in a quite filtered way or something. So something for me to some extent. And because I'd worked with Samuel, I kind of knew that our neurosis overlapped in a quite useful way, and our sense of humor was the same. I was like, I'll write a monologue because that's all that we're allowed to do anymore.
Just one person on the stage with no one around.
It's the only form of art. So it started in a kind of scrappy workshop way. As a sort of like, what's so nice, I think, is it did start as a quite sort of self-directed, kind of made thing. And then Francesca Moody saw the videos, and I already had a relationship with her. And she's, for people that don't know, she is a producer, and she's particularly big in Edinburgh because she kind of broke Fleabag there and Baby Reindeer and lots of other great shows, actually. And she's sort of well known in Edinburgh. And this felt like a good show for Edinburgh because the main character is a stand-up comedian, and it's interesting to put it in that space. And I think we thought it was good and it would do okay, but then it just kind of took off. And then we had that really great kind of 3 weeks of feeling that
feeling not afraid,
sort of feeling them closest to a feel to sort of rock stars or something, in the way that kind of comedians do in Edinburgh, which is totally artificial and mad. And then you have lots of telly people talking to you, and it's all quite exciting. I was going to ask
about that because obviously Fleabag, Baby Reindeer, these are examples of essentially first-person stories on the stage that get adapted into television shows. This is made for it, obviously. It's got a range of different characters. You can see the narrative arc. What happened to those television conversations?
Well, we're still talking in the way that things take a long time in TV land.
Yeah,
everything goes very, very slowly in television until all of a sudden it does.
It could happen.
That's so true.
But they're sort of ongoing. I mean, I think it could be a great TV show. Let's hope. That's all I can sort of say. I think for now.
And so then after Edinburgh, you took it where?
We took it to the Bush Theatre. Sort of a year later, we took it to the Bush Theatre in London, in Shepherd's Bush, which is a great little new writing venue. And then I don't know at what point Melbourne Arts Centre and Sydney Opera House kind of became involved in it. But there was always talk of Australia, and that felt really exciting to be able to kind of go back to Australia with it. And we did think that Australians, I don't know, rightly or wrongly, I just thought that, they're quite up for a good time. So it's sort of, it felt like the humour would kind of hit.
Definitely similar humour and also pretty gay and pretty on the apps.
I do find the form of monologues quite challenging. Like that's actually why I sort of don't always like monologues. And this is an appeal to people perhaps that don't like monologues, is that what I wanted to do is like, I don't want to just someone just to sort of tell a story, because you can just read a story, or there's journalism, or there's, memoir. So I wanted to do something that was also quite theatrical and kind of used the device. And so that's where the idea of it's a play, but it takes the form of a kind of confessional stand-up in places.
And Samuel, you're good at characters, so you can do it feels like you're watching more than one person as well.
Oh, that's good. I mean, I've got better at doing that. I don't really think there are any separate characters in Edinburgh, and then in the Bush I found a bit more, and finally here I think I've actually delineated some of the characters.
Oh yeah,
because actually I'm not great with like, oh dear, I'm going to talk myself out of jobs here, but like accent work takes time, and it is hard in a monologue, really finding the switches between the characters so that you really do think, oh, that voice is different, or I'm suddenly seeing an American rather than the comedian that we've been seeing. And so I've got better at it.
Yeah. No, you're good at turning the switch on and off without sort of awkwardly bleeding between characters, which can sometimes happen. So the fact, I hadn't really clocked the fact that it was written during the pandemic, where there's a lot of conversation about dying and the end of life and all of this being pointless and the end of the world, and like, why are other people not freaking out the way that I'm freaking out? Is that pandemic related, or is that partly pandemic related and partly your own existential dread?
The head being all happening in my head.
Just explain what that line is.
Oh, that's
it's another one of my favorite lines.
What's the line? He's talking about, he says, why do you always assume the worst? And he says, I don't. And he says, you do? You thought you had a brain tumour? And he's like, oh yeah, no, I didn't have a brain tumour. And he says, that's because 9 times out of 10, it's all happening in your head. And the character says, yeah, like my head isn't, as if, what is the damn line? As if my head weren't the place I live in.
Yeah.
Which it is. I mean, it's the only place we live in is our heads.
Yeah.
So
I think that's quite a profound point just about mental health in general, right? Like, oh, don't worry about it. So, it's all in your head. Well, of course it's all, everything's fucking in my head.
My head's attached to my body.
Yes.
I can't get away from it.
It's not just my head. It's the universe, the whole universe.
Everything is happening in here.
Is in here.
Yeah.
There's no universe without this.
Yeah.
From my first person solipsistic subjective experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, it was, and it did have that. And there's a bit where it's like, why are we just doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this show? Why aren't we kind of running around screaming or living in a bunker? And I'm sure that was informed by pandemic dread. But the flip side of all that, I don't know if I should say this, but like I found lockdown, and I know in Victoria they had massive lockdowns, and they had it here as well, but we were just locked down for so long and it kept happening. But what that did weirdly do is I found myself more relaxed in some weird way, because the kind of worst case was happening, and my kind of weird catastrophizing brain felt kind of somewhat like vindicated momentarily.
Oh, that's interesting. That's so interesting.
See, I did tell you this sort of thing would happen.
When you spend years being anxious and assuming that the worst is going to happen, and then it happens, you go, yep, there you go. I'm ready for it. How's everyone else going to cope? Are you all having breakdowns? Because I'm prepared.
But also, who's laughing now?
Yeah.
But I sort of felt like, okay. And then actually also it took you slightly off the merry-go-round of interactions. And I was quite productive during that period. Like I wrote a lot.
Interesting. Yeah, I had that. I'm not an anxious person, but at the beginning, I'm a clued in, scientifically minded journalistic person. So in January, and certainly by early February of 2020, I was hearing enough from colleagues around the world who understood epidemiology to be like, this is it, this is the big one, this is coming. And people thought that I was a Chicken Little. In early February, people were like, we'll be back at, we'll,
3 weeks.
3 weeks, whatever. And then I've had exactly the same experience where once the supermarket shelves were bare and everyone was freaking out, I had this immense sense of calm, because I've been really anxious for the past 5 or 6 weeks, feeling like I was crazy. And now I was just like, all right, the train's leaving the station and we're all on it now. So I can kind of relax. I don't have to worry about this silly thing that I think is coming, because now it's obviously here
Yeah.
and everybody understands it and nobody is under any illusions about the scale of the thing.
Yeah.
So now I can just chill.
Yeah. I mean, you coming up with this monologue was a real gift for me, because my dad died of COVID really early on.
Sorry.
I mean, it is what it is. And he died on April 1st and we'd locked down, I think, on the 23rd of March. So it was really soon. And it is sort of almost not acceptable to say, but lockdown was great for me because I had time to grieve. Like, I did not have to do real life. But then this show came along, and you didn't write in the character's dad dies, but you didn't write that in because of...
No, because my stepdad died.
Yeah. So we'd both lost dads, and how do I process stuff apart from through therapy? It's actually through being creative and being an actor, and you just put yourself in your work. So I remember the first time we sort of did the workshop and then the run through, and I was just like, I was still grieving, but there was something brilliant about being able to slightly remove it from myself and talk about a character whose dad's died, rather than having to sit in my own shit the whole time. But being able to sit in my own shit actually for 6 months and not have to engage with life, plus being able to be creative through this monologue, I think it saved me. I really do. I think it weirdly sped up the grieving process. I remember saying to my therapist after about 9 months, and we'd come out of lockdown and gone into lockdown again. And I was like, I keep waiting for a breakdown to happen. Like, when am I going to do, like you see in the movies, when am I going to do the kind of, I'm fine, and then hit by a train of grief? She's like, you've been doing it for 9 months. Like, it's just been, you've been able to process because you've had nothing else to do. So you've had to.
And did you have periods of intense grief where you were crying all day?
Really early on, I did.
Yeah.
Really early on. I cried. I've never cried that much in my life. I've always found crying really hard. Actually, I'm not somebody who's... it turns out I actually need someone with me to cry. Didn't really know that about myself. Didn't really cry that much as a kid. But there was something so... It's the worst that happened. It was so weird because it's bad losing a parent. Like, it's one of the worst things, losing a parent. But then losing a parent to a mysterious disease that's forced the world to stop, and everyone's frightened of getting it, and everyone's frightened of losing someone to it. And I lost someone so quickly and so early. It was like, oh, well, it's happened and I'm okay. And I sobbed for a long time, and then just didn't. And actually the next time I really sobbed was when, it's just, so he died April 1st. I had my 40th birthday in lockdown on April 25th, same day as my dad's birthday. So that was annoying. A year on, we were in lockdown again, and I hadn't cried for a long time. And my now husband, then partner, had commissioned a painting of my dad for my 41st birthday, which I unwrapped, and it undid me because I was like, it was the 1 year anniversary of him dying. And I was like, I don't really know how to honor this. We're in lockdown again. I didn't get a funeral. I didn't get a memorial. There was nothing.
It's either, that gift is either incredibly sweet or totally tactless. And I can't figure out which.
Unbelievably beautiful. He knows me well enough to judge what would have been right. And it was by an artist who I love. It was my favorite picture of my dad, which I don't know if my husband knew that. And I opened this thing and it was him. And I was like, oh my God, that's how you honor someone. Like, what a beautiful and very privileged way of doing that. And, it sits on my wall at home, and everyone's, that thing that people do when someone dies, he'll be with you in your heart. And I was very much like, no, he's very much dead. Like, he's very much not here. I don't know what that means. And weirdly, I sort of get it now that I'm not in the thick of that grief. I mean, we're 5 years on now, so I'm really not in the thick of it at all. But even a year on, I was like, oh, I sort of get it. Your relationship with a dead person carries on even though they're dead. It's weird to say and feel and think that, but it's true.
But it's also tin-eared of people to try to point it out when it's not the thing that you
like, literally day one, he'll be with you in your heart. I'm like, fuck off, he's not with me in my heart. He's very dead.
I mean, in defense of the people who are saying that, I've lost a few people recently, but one particularly close person who was the sibling of my best friend who I knew very well. And fuck, it's hard knowing what to say to someone you love who's lost something like that.
Yeah.
I've made multiple blunders of that kind, like at some point just trying to be constructive in framing it in a way that I feel like might be an escape hatch from the root and from the grief rather. And it's like, they don't fucking want the escape hatch. They want to be validated in the fact that this is the worst thing that's ever happened to them by far, and just sit with that. Stop trying to fix it.
But also, I never rejected anybody's kind of approach of he'll be with you in your heart ever. I was very gracious. I said, thank you. I was like, absolutely. Whilst thinking, that's not what I need right now.
Right.
So,
yes.
and it's interesting. The people who really know, I guess this is just a universal thing. The people who really know what to say are the ones who've kind of experienced something similar, I guess, and just go, you know, the most useful one was a friend of mine who lost his wife a few years ago. And he just messaged and went, there's nothing I can say. There is nothing that will be useful. I'm sending you a book if you ever want to read it, no pressure. And I did read it and it was brilliant. And it was that. It was just like,
what was it?
It was by, now look, is it Lewis Carroll or C.S. Lewis? Which one?
Both people.
C.S. Lewis maybe talks about grief.
Yes, C.S. Lewis wrote this book about grief. Can't remember what it's called. A Grief Observed. That's what it's called. It's a thin little book about losing his partner. It's like a diary. But one of the brilliant things he said, and it was really early on in sort of my grieving process, but he said, we have a tendency to immediately eulogize the person that's dead. We immediately go, oh, they were just so wonderful and everything. And he said, I want to remember my partner for everything that she was. And that was so helpful for me because I didn't want to go into, oh, my dad and I had a complicated relationship. And and certainly towards the end of his life, we had a brilliant relationship. And I'd worked a lot on that. And I think so had he. But I didn't want to kind of do the kind of sugarcoating of, oh, my dad was the most wonderful man. He was the most wonderful man. He was also a man and complicated. And that was one of the most useful things I took from that book. It's like, you're allowed to still think, well, they were a complete bastard and I loved them. Not that my dad was a complete bastard, but that kind of thing. You're allowed those extremes. Again, it's like the non-binary, just like everything's allowed.
We contain multitudes.
Yeah.
And do you think that losing someone so early in the pandemic changed your relationship to risk during the pandemic?
Yeah, it did. It did. That's a really, no one's ever really directly asked me that before. Because like my guilty secret is that there was a period towards the end of summer where everything opened up and you were allowed to fly and go on holiday, but people weren't. And there was a real judgmental thing going on. And I was like, fuck this. I have had, people have had it worse and I've had it quite bad. I've had a shit 6 months. So me and Adam, my partner, we got on a plane and went to Ithaca and had the most extraordinary week there. It was deserted and it was so good for the soul. And then we crept back and we didn't tell anyone. And then when I did tell people, there was judgment.
Yeah.
Risk as well. Yes, I did absolutely become a bit more like, hey, look, if it's going to kill me, it's going to kill me. I've had my vaccines. I was careful. I observed all the rules like you do. But I was a bit like, I think it's made death feel a lot more present for me. And I mean, and you've lost someone. And I feel like, I don't know, weirdly, even before my dad died, sounds so morbid. And I don't even know what I mean by this really, but just this sense of death, not as a, oh my God, we're all going to die. And not like that, but just this awareness that I think we can all be in denial about of like, oh yeah, it's existential, I think.
Yes.
We are going to die. And I've carried that with me. And then since my dad's died, it's like, yeah, I can fully say I'm kind of scared of my own death. Absolutely. It's not like I've become friends with the idea of it, but we do lose people and it's okay when we do. If I can get through that, if I can grieve that, I can do anything. That's what it's felt like.
Yeah, that's interesting because one could imagine it going either way, either becoming hyper vigilant about the pathogen or the other way. I mean, on the presence of death in one's life, I actually have a thing in my bedroom, which is have you seen these calendars that have a square for each week of your life? It's it's a calendar. It's a piece of paper with a large block of squares, and it's 4,000 weeks, which is an 80-year.
Oh
lifespan.
My God, that sounds like
and
nothing.
Every Friday I color in another dot and you can see the life that I have drifting, like slipping through my fingers.
Why do you do that?
For the same reasons you're talking about, I think it's look, it's going to happen. it's just a part of reality. And I think to some extent, the greatest risk is that you squander the precious time here by pretending that it's very important to do all your busy things and lose sight of the fact that you just have this one very brief glimmer of consciousness and then you sink back into the inky void. And that's fine, as you say. I don't dwell on it, but like note it. Like
it is a reality.
Give it the respect that it deserves.
And I think, and I think I do end up writing about death quite a lot in my stuff, but often because it's a kind of really clarifying, dare I use the word, kind of special moment when someone sort of dies. It really does do something. I know it's a cliche to say. It's not necessarily like, oh, now I'm going to seize life. It's just like, this is a real thing. Everything else is kind of ephemera or stress potentially, but this is real. And you are potentially dealing with it. And through that, you're also kind of growing and changing. And that's a positive. Everything else actually feels, I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know.
And how did you deal with the grief of losing your stepfather? Because there's an interesting moment in the show where the protagonist has a very cavalier and comical attitude towards the death of his father, and the person who he's dating has this very American attitude towards self-help and self-actualization, and wants to give it the gravitas that it deserves, and talks about the death as being a real trauma. It's a trauma, and it's a very funny moment, but it does present this, on the one hand, kind of Oprah American attitude towards like understanding oneself, and a much more glib British, perhaps Australian.
Yes, that really lands well here.
It does. It resonates a lot.
Yeah.
She'll be right, mate.
Yeah.
That attitude to that. Don't dig too deep.
Yeah.
Don't talk about. We don't do feelings.
Right. God, here we've been doing it for like 10 minutes now.
Well, we do feelings on this show. As a country.
I don't know. I don't think I processed it very well. I was quite young. I was literally, that is a line from my life. Like, I was 21 when it happened, and I did have to kind of move back home and look after my mum, and probably that insecurity or sense of the world being so fragile had a strange effect where actually, rather than I think probably seizing it and going out and having lots of sex or whatever, I kind of went, I sort of need to settle down. Age 21. And that I think makes sense, but I don't think I processed it fully, and I probably still haven't. But I do think it's tough when you're a bit younger, and you've also got, my mum was really kind of traumatized by it. So your feelings kind of take a sort of step back, and you try not to process it. And a lot of times, actually, and this is my fault and my problem, is I try and kind of just speed through things. I'm like, okay, well, let's get that over with.
Take it off the check.
And then let's keep busy, which is human, but
just in terms of brain development, all this neuroscience now that our brains aren't even fully developed until sort of the age of 25. So anything happening before then, you don't even necessarily have the brain power, neural pathways to process stuff like this. I feel, again, really lucky that stuff happened to me the age it happened. Like, Dad dying when I was 39, turning 40, after a lot of therapy, meant I had ways of processing it. I can't imagine at the age of 21, I think that might have broken me at 21 rather than made me. I don't know if I would have even had coping mechanisms around kind of keeping busy and looking after other people. I think I just would have had a breakdown.
Well, I think, and I think the catastrophizing of the character is that tendency can be traced to that, because I sort of just assume the world will just keep sort of ending continually because it can.
Well, it will. For individuals, it does.
Yes. But some people are
dying right now.
And other people are able to sort of just get through that in a way that feels more effortless than I sort of can. And I yes, Australians, I think, have a different relationship to that. And I do sometimes wonder, because if we'd stayed in Australia, would I have been a much more chilled human being or not? I don't know. There's something quite British as well.
I think Britain's fucked you up.
Yeah, it might.
I mean, there is something about it.
What's your intuition?
I don't know. It's probably... I don't know. I think... Oh, actually, no, I have thoughts. Okay. Here are my thoughts. I think...
Hear ye, hear ye.
I loved... I was kind of excited when we moved over to the UK. And I mean, there's whole things about what I was told and not told about the move. But broadly speaking,
were you told it was going to be a short-term thing, or it turned out to be?
Were you?
Wow, that's bold.
Yes, but I did enjoy the first period because it feels like you're in a kind of Mary Poppins, or it had that kind of quality. But also, Britons love subtext, and they love kind of coded rules. Like, you don't know quite where you are a lot of the time. So suddenly being actually quite, I don't think I was that gregarious, but all Australians are gregarious compared to English people. So I think I was a bit kind of an oddity as well. I was quite emotional, I think, at that age, and quite just up for stuff. And also, this is true, I would keep getting into fights, and I'm not so someone would sort of tease me, or there'd be something, and I would just thump them, and I don't know where I got that from.
I kind of love that.
I know.
But our Aussie battler.
I know, yeah. But I quickly got that kind of sort of shamed out of me. As, that's not. I mean, you can't. There's a problem. There's a problem here. And maybe there was. I don't know.
If you're belting other people in the schoolyard, there's a problem.
Well, but if you're being picked on, I don't know. There was a kind of. But I instead internalized and went, "Oh, that's probably me being something to do with me, rather than them." And I think. The Brits aren't great at talking about the feelings. There's loads of codes of behaviour. I remember this intense moment, which is so small, but I just remember it, of being really young and being first moving over, and we were I was a friend, someone from school, and their parents invited me around, and I kind of immediately crossed the threshold or something, into the house or something, because they were but they hadn't said come in, and I was really told oh no, you're not allowed to do that. You have to wait.
Wow. How interesting.
And I was like, "Ooh, I'm a terrible human." That was my immediate kind of response
that
to
was
that.
Definitely them, because that's not a code. That's not a code that I know of. But
well, I think it's sort of maybe I sort of was just maybe a bit boisterous and kind of went straight in or something. But even then, it's
there is an unfathomable network of social cues to an outsider that exist in the United Kingdom.
And class,
to an insider as well. I mean, stuff that I just don't get. I'm like, I can't read a room sometimes with these things. I think it is also a real class thing there. I mean, I'm from very much we were poor when I was young, we just were, and I found going to London and being at drama school and meeting people of different classes really interesting and really confusing. There's stuff that I just still don't think I understand.
I mean, there's a public school clique to Australian listeners or American listeners. That means private school in England, which I don't quite understand why they call them public schools, because they're not public. But there's an educated, well-off class. There is, and it is a visceral club, isn't it? And there are markers of where you went to school, and markers of your accent, and markers of the kinds of ways that you can talk about literature that immediately put you inside or outside the club, in a way that, although there are sort of loose analogues in a place like Australia, I think it's much more porous and much less mysteriously kind of enforced by these.
We've even got this whole thing built into our social fabric of social mobility. This idea that you can climb. It's like, what? Why is anyone having to climb? What is that about? And what does that mean? And what about the people you're supposedly leaving behind then? That the whole system is really not good.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, and then it's an illusion that there's going to be a meritocracy that completely disregards your accent and your way of dressing and what you know about how you're supposed to comb your hair and whether or not, you groom correctly or drop the appropriate bon mots into conversation or have a particular accent. It's and then you throw race into it and sexuality into it, and it becomes even more complicated. I mean, there are all these unspoken things. It seems weird to just be we're going to all be socially mobile.
Yeah, because you're right, because it's not a meritocracy.
No, and they do know. That's what's so funny, is I've got a fairly posh British accent, which I lost my Australian really quickly, because I did have a proper Australian accent, and that must have been some sort of self-preservation thing. But it doesn't pass, it wouldn't, they would know that I'm not really posh.
Right.
Because there's such a difference between RP, which is sort of received pronunciation, whereby you're not meant to be able to tell where you're from at all. So that's RP. There's a real difference between that and a posh accent.
Yeah.
There still is.
Yeah, there still is. And it's what school you went to and where you grew up, and all those codes. I mean, I know people have that everywhere, but it's the air you breathe in the UK.
There's someone said an example that you're reminding me of, which is that it was about the difference between meeting an American and meeting a Brit and trying to get to know them. And they were saying that Have you heard this?
I know. Yeah, I've got my own version because someone told me about this.
It has. You may know a better version than me, but the way I think I heard it was that if you imagine sort of storming the beaches at Normandy, then meeting a British, trying to get included into a British social circle is like there's an implacable cliff that you're trying to climb, and you have to like clamber up it and clamber up it and clamber up it. But once you actually reach the top, then there are vast open vistas, and you sort of know your place. And once you know the code, then you can be accepted. But with no, actually, it's the opposite way around. Did I say that's British? That was American.
I think that's right. I've got a walls analogy.
Talk to me.
They say with British people, it's like high outer walls, low inner walls. So you get over that cliff, and you're in.
Yes,
with Americans,
that's right.
it's the other. With Americans, it's like,
myself. Yes, whereas with an American, it's like you storm the beaches at Normandy, and it's very easy, and you just hide, and you go on and on, and you go on and on, but you keep going on and on and on and on and on, and you keep wandering and wandering and wandering, and you never quite get there. You never reach the fortification. It's pleasantries all the way. It's have a nice day, and like, you know, thank you for your service and whatever. But you never actually know when you've made it into the inner sanctum.
Because the inner walls are so high, the outer walls are so low, you just step over them. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Which, to bring it back to the play, because there is an American in that, and that was something we were kind of interested in exploring. Like some people just love the American romantic interest in the play, and I'm sort of ambivalent about him sometimes. Like there is lovely that, you know, he falls in love, but actually, like, how real or how easy is it actually to be with the American? I don't really know.
Yes. Well, does he have depth?
Is the question.
Right? Yeah.
But
is
depth just kind of oversharing?
Yes, it's
that side of that.
Absolutely, it's depth that you've just had a lot of therapy and you know how to speak the emotional intelligence language.
Right.
Or is there actually depth?
Yeah.
Connection.
And I got on a date with an American. I mean, I sort of saw an American for a while, and then I also went on another date with an American, and we got into that conversation of like depth, and he says, I actually don't know if I have any. Like people say, you know, is there a sort of deeper level? Yeah. And he's like, what does that mean? And I was like, actually, I don't know if I can tell you. I don't know.
I sometimes feel that way, honestly. Yes. And maybe I think I might be so unexamined that it would take a therapist so long to burrow away, peeling the onion skins back till they got down to something true. But what if I get down there and it's just empty and there's nothing there? There is just me. I am just pure artifice.
Yeah.
A shell of a human being.
I think that you have awareness of that means you have depth.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's so just staying in London. It's so interesting that you went there when you were 10 and then and under the auspices of only going for a short time and then stayed. Because when I was 10, we moved to London under the auspices of going for a short time with the plan of staying forever. And my brother and I kicked up such a stink that my parents pulled the plug on it.
Wow.
And my dad, who was an actor, was like, they had only come back in order to raise my brother and me because they lived there in the 60s and 70s. And so then they thought in the 80s, well, let's just go back and went back, and he achieved his dream of being accepted into the Royal Shakespeare Company and literally had to call them back and say, I'm not going to take it. I'm going to move back to Australia just
my God.
So that the children can live in sunshine and climb trees. But do you ever wish that decision had been made, or that it had gone the other way?
Yeah, sometimes. I think maybe it would help having a brother, actually.
Someone else to fortify the...
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, I think I did enjoy it at the begining, but I sort of at some point just sort of thought I can't complain. Like the idea of kind of kicking up a fuss was quite hard.
Yeah. I'm just a boy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you adapt. And actually, kids are so adaptable, but it's like, well... Or you just, you know...
Well, they store it.
They
adapt, they store it for later.
Yeah, so they talk to their therapist.
But I sort of wish maybe I had kind of... Because I did miss Australia. And... I mean, I could sort of talk about this endlessly, but like, I was quite good at sports in Australia. And I'm an okay swimmer, actually. But I was quite good at stuff. And then something about England just kind of like stamped all of that.
The athleticism.
Yeah, no, but because it's all about like being kind of broy and but also like actually sports taught really badly. And I went to a school in Twickenham, which is like the home of rugby. So it was like obsessed with rugby. I didn't really teach it. They just kind of threw you into a scrum and kind of flattened you. And that was the experience. But I just sort of so then one's identity is formed by like, I'm not a sports person. I'm not someone who looks after my body. I'm not like, you know, I'm all about the mind.
Right.
I think like it's so nice being here where it's like actually sport isn't a signifier. I mean, I know Australians are kind of obsessed with sport, but
Totally
it's not just straight people that do sport.
Right, I see. Yes.
Which I think in the UK,
it's very delineated.
it's delineated.
Yeah.
in a
Yeah,
strange
and there's
way.
a strange kind of it's peculiar for the gay non-sports person to observe the level of homoerotic homophobia that exists amongst straight sport athletes, right? It's like
it's hot. Yeah,
like you're all having like they'll get caught in a hotel room, all having a gangbang with some girls, like with their cocks flying in each other's faces, and it's portrayed as the straightest thing that's ever happened because there was a girl present.
It's so weird.
Yeah, it's so weird. It reminds me of, is it Bill Burr who has a bit about a couple of guys, this is really offensive, couple of guys spit roasting a girl where like she's down and she's giving a blowjob to one of them and the other guy is like on the other end and like he's fucking her and the two guys are like looking at each other and the comic is like, give the girl the night off. She's not needed. You know, what's she doing there?
Yes.
And it feels that way.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what I mean when I say like everyone's straight until they're not. Like that is there's such a blurred this whole idea that you are one thing.
Yeah.
I think is insane. It's insane. I don't know where it's come from. Something about control. Who knows?
Probably the
toxic
church
masculinity in
originally,
church.
isn't it? Yeah,
Absolutely.
married.
But even that, it's like, why? So the fact that we're still in that today, it's just, I actually find it exhausting and kind of boring that that's where we're still at. And that it's getting worse. The more freedoms we've had, the more it's swinging the other way in terms of all of that.
I mean, so
oppression.
the social conservative would say the reason it's swinging the other way is because there is greater fulfillment in the institutions of family, love, structure, marriage, than the quest that this play in some ways portrays, this soulless, empty quest to fill oneself up with meaningless sexual relationships, right? Like, and I do feel, I think you're right, that there's a tipping point culturally where people are starting to question whether, for example, consent is the only metric by which things should be judged. Like, is it we live in this very kind of 1960s hippy-dippy, like enlightened, sexually liberated idea where as long as two people agree to it, that's totally fine. But I think social conservatives are saying, yeah, it might be fine, but it might also be less fulfilling than other ways of being, like being in a relationship that has fidelity and commitment and stability. And like, I don't know where you
I sort of
fall on that.
I don't know. I just also there's often so much hypocrisy in social conservatism.
this
It's
is
like,
what I
how
think.
real
That's
is
exactly
that?
where
I mean,
I
are
go
they
to.
actually having affairs? And like, I think sometimes it's a kind of position. I don't actually know
Well,
how
all
lived
right.
it is.
But I mean, play the ball, not the man, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
assume that they're not hypocrites who are making this argument. Assume that
I
we're
think
judging the claim on its merit.
personal. I think I've had to. I mean, on monogamy, say, or like, I guess monogamy. Like, I try to be as sex positive as possible, but I've kind of more or less worked out that I'm. I get things from monogamy that is kind of useful for me, but I'm not opposed to people exploring other things. I don't feel the need to say or impose or kind of value judge what they're doing, because I think it's possible for both to exist, you know.
Yeah, I think the problem is seeing any particular group as a monolith, including themselves. I think social conservatism and the people who kind of live that also see themselves as one particular thing. And it's like, what happens to that child in that family where those are the values, where they don't fit?
Yes.
So I just go, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. This idea that that might not be as fulfilling. It's like, well, it might not be as fulfilling for that person. So they might, like you've just said, they might get more out of monogamy than just casual sex. It's so individual. And that's what I struggle with, these movements, whether it is the kind of, because I think there are plenty of gay people who think that, that lifestyle of those kind of social conservatives, the kind of monogamy and stuff, who would want that? Like boring. It's like all this judgment. It is just unhelpful. I think any monolith.
And there is a pressure. I sort of feel like I sort of have to come out as being in a monogamous relationship because it's not the norm in gay life. So you can feel a kind of judgment sometimes.
Do you get judged for being married?
Haven't felt judged for being married yet. I absolutely relate to that thing of because we only got married in June, but we've been together for We've been together for 13 years. I think I've definitely felt judged sometimes for like being in monogamous relationships, or people going, "Oh, you're not open." It's like,
Yeah.
well, no. But again, it's my partner and I talk about this regularly. We reassess regularly. We're like, do we want to do that? It's whatever works for you. Again, as an individual, it's the judgment that is the problem here. We're
No,
not
I
doing it
understand,
to
but
one
the
another.
judgment,
Yeah.
I think the reaction that's happening, and the reason I'm speaking about this right now is because there was an interesting piece by Ross Douthat, who's a socially conservative but reasonable person at the New York Times, in response to the controversy around Neil Gaiman, who's this, did you see that?
Yeah.
He's a brilliant not comic, graphic art novelist, who was accused of non-consensual sexual relations because he's into BDSM. And so there was this big expose in a newspaper, I think it was the New Yorker, the New York Magazine or something, where one of the girls who he was with, and he's an older guy and she was a younger girl, she said that she didn't feel that it was consensual, but all of their interactions sound like it's consensual. And so the point that Douthat was making was like, it is leading us into a really difficult area when we've established that the only yardstick is whether or not a person consents, because maybe it's not as maybe life just isn't as good when you're consenting to eating your own shit and being pissed on by an old man as it would be if you weren't consenting to those things, because it's understandable that she's now saying that she regrets it. But you can't hold him accountable necessarily for the fact that she later regrets what she then consented to. But like, and so I think the Douthats of the world are going like, maybe marriage was maybe there was a reason for not trying to reinvent how to live life individually, like 7 billion times a day in 7 billion ways on the planet. But I understand that also sounds paternalistic.
No, I think conflating, because I absolutely hear what you're saying about that argument, the social conservative argument. But I think the problem with bringing Gaiman into it is the mountain of evidence that's stacked up, where there's now a pattern of behavior with multiple women. So there's this amazing podcast that they did, which is, I think, 8 episodes long, and it's several women. And what's amazing is they've got actual voice note recordings of things that he said, and they've gone to him with a load of questions, and he's answered all the questions. So you get what the women are saying, and you get his responses to it. And by the end of and actually through the podcast, even I was going, I mean, it does sound kind of reasonable. Like it was kind of just like BDSM. There's nothing wrong with BDSM. And then by the end of the podcast, you're going, oh yeah, there's an absolute pattern of behavior here that clearly this was not to do with BDSM. This was to do with consent. And there is so much stuff that happened that these women say that was not just BDSM. It was just non-consensual stuff. So there's this pattern of behavior. So I almost think bringing him into it isn't necessarily
okay, well, I may
helpful,
not know enough about his specific situation, but one can imagine a scenario in which every person in the world is trying to figure out what gets their rocks off, and is not necessarily doing as good a job as if they use the. Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but maybe it's not as constructive as just taking the heuristic of like find someone who you really like and then try to make that work.
But you can't do that for 7 billion individuals. It can't be done, because we have to be able to explore everything, make mistakes, find what works. And the problem with doing that is the judgment that's put on that, is the kind of, well, if you're doing that, then you're not okay. It's like, who is anyone to say that anyone else is not okay?
Yes.
And who is anyone to say that that lifestyle isn't as good as that lifestyle? And if you're not enjoying your lifestyle, you can do something about it. What we need is empowerment and emotional intelligence teaching to understand that when it doesn't work for us, we can make the changes. Not, well, if that's not working for you, then go and do that.
Right.
That isn't going to solve it.
And I think that's part of the backlash. I think part of the backlash is a sense from normies that actually the people who've been judgmental over the past few decades is the other side.
Absolutely.
That has sort of denigrated tradition for the sake of denigrating tradition.
And that's what I mean. It's just as bad.
Yeah.
It's just as bad. No matter where it's coming from, I'm just like, can we all kind of stop doing it?
I mean, I've had the experience of being in a gay bar and chatting to somebody and having a perfectly nice conversation, and them then noticing my wedding ring and being like, you're married? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, they rudely scoff and then storm off. Like, and it's not a question about whether or not I'm available for sex. That wasn't the point. The point is that I embody something that's deeply offensive to them, and they think that their identity is wrapped up in a countercultural pushback against against what I represent, which is which is hegemony and like tradition and boring normality, when they're being such a rebel out there. And I'm like, yes, you're a fucking conformist.
Yes, absolutely. And this idea that anyone on the left is better than anyone on the right and vice versa is just part of the problem. Like, none of us are better than anyone else. It's just, I don't know what it is about. I mean, talk about self-sabotage. Human beings in general, when you look at what we're doing to each other, what we're doing to the planet, all of that stuff, you go, why do we have this inbuilt thing to essentially destroy? I mean, we do. We just want to do it to each other. We want to do it to the planet. It's like, what are we doing? And I don't know how you raise the consciousness to kind of, for everyone to, it's a bit like that. I mean, I love that you have that the weekly thing on your calendar. It's like, if we all knew that, if we really knew that, would the things that we get so judgmental and het up about and destructive about, would we do it in the same way? I don't know.
Yeah. And I think people feel threatened, and the more people feel threatened and the more people feel disoriented and destabilized, the more likely they are to be unempathetic towards
absolutely
other people.
And you're right. Oh my God, that's the word, empathy. That's the word.
And I think as soon as you start creating kind of overarching kind of claims like that, I just think it's sort of individual, really. I think that works. I don't understand if you're also for kind of civil liberties, why you then want to mandate that for everyone.
No, it's not about mandating. No, I
think
think to be fair to Douthit, I think the claim would be, can we live in a world in which I'm not pilloried for saying that the choice to eat my own shit because someone is ordering me to is an inferior choice to the choice to running a family?
Absolutely.
Like,
and we
can I not be treated as an old-fashioned bigot?
And we can totally,
that's his point.
That should be the world, as long as then those people aren't then doing the same to other people. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
it's like,
yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, lastly, I think one of the last interesting theme that I wanted to touch on is, you know this term adulting?
Yeah.
What is that? What is that?
Who knows? I don't know.
You know, like the sense that you're supposed to be a grown-up, but actually we're just children wandering around, and like we're just pretending to be grown-up. That was the thing that I was left with by after the show, which is, it's really about a 36-year-old trying to figure out whether or not like they're doing being a grown-up right. Like, am I a grown-up yet?
Yeah.
Do I know how to do it?
Yeah.
Are you guys grown-ups yet?
No.
I
have no idea.
Will you ever be?
No, I don't really know what that means. I mean, I think adulting is about paying bills and seeming functional, and I can do it, but I find it hard, and I think I will always feel like I'm a child in a room of grown-ups. That's how I've always felt, and I kind of think that's okay.
Does everyone feel that way?
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I certainly do.
And I think that I remember being in my early 20s and having a horrifying epiphany that when you grow up, when you're a kid, you sort of assume that like there are grown-ups in charge who are making sure that everything's going to run okay.
Yeah.
And then you grow up and you go, oh, they're all fuckwit. They're all kids wearing suits.
Yeah.
They're all just grown-up imposters. They're all like me, and there's no one looking after the shop.
Yeah, but they pretend they have the authority. It's like, because they assume the authority and they pretend they have it. I go, oh, well, you do then. You are a grown-up. I'm like, I hope they're all pretending as well, because I certainly am.
Well, you can clearly see that if they're protesting too much, then they're pretending. Like Donald Trump is clearly a small boy in his daddy's suit. You know, like he just reeks of it. And I suppose the most grown-up people are the people who wear it as lightly as possible, the Dalai Lama or Nelson Mandela or Barack Obama or someone like that, who just seems like they're comfortable in their own skin and magnanimous.
Yeah.
Are you a grown-up?
No, but no. And
how dare
God
you?
No, God no.
But I don't want to leave. I'm weighing up whether to sort of talk about this, because I know we're kind of at the end of the thing. But like, that's what makes the world so scary, right? Is that like no one I don't understand why the world is not falling apart all the time because
Yeah.
these people, and how anything is working. I don't understand how anything is working.
Generally in most places and times hasn't.
Yeah.
Is the answer to that, which is what's so scary about this moment.
Yeah.
Like, we managed over many, many centuries to figure out a delicate balance after World War II, where
Yes.
we just precariously built this China edifice, like this house of cards, where we've got these institutions. We go, tomorrow, thank you to the Enlightenment, thank you to the ancient Greeks. Like, we've all put it all together, and wow, like. Everyone's kind of okay in like liberal democracies. This is great. And now people are like, fuck this stupid liberal democracy bullshit.
Let's have World War III.
Exactly. Let's just try different stuff. I'm like, well, we were trying different stuff for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Go to Cambodia if you want different stuff. There's lots of places. Go to North Korea. There's lots of places with different stuff. Saudi Arabia. They all do different stuff. Liberal democracy is good.
Yeah, but people, the argument keeps needing to be made, doesn't it? And I guess it hasn't, and hasn't quite taken people along with it. And people have been left behind, and that's where we kind of are. But yes, I guess that's. But still, I'm just like, to people, like, I genuinely look around at the world and it's like, but what if those computers stop working and we have no cash anymore? It'll be like 2 days or something. Am I going to like be
Are you hoarding gold?
Well, but just like, but that's also where it leads to that weird paranoia that then probably supports this sort of very individualistic kind of view of the world, where it's just me against the world. So it's sort of an interesting self-perpetuating loop.
Yeah, I mean, COVID was interesting in that as well, wasn't it? Like, to suddenly realize, we could just turn off the spigot of exports from China and we'd all be fucked. Like, how many weeks worth of toilet paper do we have? How quickly do we descend into Lord of the Flies?
So the most important thing to do in the meantime is just have, I don't know, like, there is that thing of like, oh, well, do I write about that, or do I just kind of keep kind of trying to work, kind of entertain, and kind of understand a bit more?
The job of an artist is not to preach, right?
No,
the job of an artist is to wrestle with these kinds of themes.
Just hold up the mirror.
Explore the kind of human condition as a way of maybe kind of creating a sort of bigger awareness of other things. But I'm sort of less interested in kind of preaching it.
All right. I look forward to your next play, which will be entitled "All of the Shit Things Are Going to Happen If You Guys Don't Vote Labour." Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Cheers.